We're continuing our series of exploring our roots, exploring some of these values that have been shared with us by SSUC Saskatoon. And today we continue that exploration as we discover what it is to be rooted in integrity. Welcome to this circle, a safe place to be, whether you've joined us in this room at Southminster Steinhauer United Church in Edmonton, or you're gathering as SSUC in Saskatoon, or you've joined us online from Scotland or Belgium or Charlottetown or Kelowna or Toronto or points in between. We welcome you, and you help us create this spiritual community that we create and recreate every time we gather. And whether you've never been in this circle before or whether you hold the rim of this circle from time to time as it gathers, we welcome you and celebrate the diversity of who we are together, diversity of culture and color, of language and traditions, of sexual orientations and gender identities, of different ages and stages in life. And it's with gratitude that we gather on the good land of Treaty 6, ancestral land of Cree peoples, Métis peoples, and of those who have come from around the world, newer comers, generations ago or weeks ago. We acknowledge our responsibility as partners, transcending the wounds of our history and seeking healing and reconciliation with one another. And as we gather, we turn toward the light of a new morning, the gift of a new day, of new possibilities, new beginnings, new energies, new opportunities to renew our commitment to live with deep integrity, to be true to ourselves, to be true to our humanity, to be faithful to the sacredness of life in which we live and move and have our being. We are people who pray best with our feet, moved by the faithful direction of our hearts, our North Star. And we come with one another that we might pray together, that we might find a way to strengthen our intentions. As we do that this morning, we invoke the cadence and the pattern of a prayer that is attributed to Jesus of Nazareth, the prayer he taught his friends to pray. And in contemporary image and language, we offer that pattern as a way for us to ask, teach us to pray. And so we do with one another. We open to the sacredness at the heart of all, called by many names. We open to deep mystery we trust to be love. May we be faithful to the vision of building a beloved community on earth. May there be daily bread to nourish all hunger, forgiveness for the harm we have done, and the capacity to forgive those who have hurt us. May we not feel abandoned in hard times, but find the strength to meet each moment and the wisdom to walk in the light of deep gratitude. For the light of love is with us now and forever. Amen.
It's story time. Our Time for All Ages is a time that we welcome anyone up to the carpet for a time of story, a time of chat. Morning, everyone. Today's story is called The Empty Pot. This is an old Chinese folktale. A long time ago in China, there was a boy named Ping who loved flowers. Anything he planted burst into bloom. Up came flowers, bushes, and even big fruit trees, as if by magic. Everyone in the kingdom loved flowers too. They planted them everywhere, and the air smelled like perfume. The emperor loved birds and animals, but flowers most of all, and he tended his own garden every day. But the emperor was very old. He needed to choose who the next emperor would be. Who would it be, and how would the emperor choose? Because the emperor loved flowers so much, he decided to let the flowers decide. The next day, a proclamation was issued. All the children in the land were to come to the palace. They would be given special flower seeds by the emperor. Whoever can show me their best flowers in 1 year will be the next emperor. This news created great excitement through the land. Children from all over the country swarmed to the palace to get their seeds. All the parents wanted their children to be chosen as the next emperor, and all the children hoped that they would be chosen too. When Ping received his seed from the emperor, he was the happiest child of all. He was sure he would grow the most beautiful flowers. Ping filled a flower pot with rich soil. He planted the seed in it very carefully. He watered it every day. He couldn't wait to see it sprout, grow, and blossom into a beautiful flower. Day after day passed, but nothing grew in his pot. Ping was very worried. He put new soil into a bigger pot. Then he transferred the seed into the rich black soil. Another 2 months he waited, and still nothing happened. Look, the flowers are coming off the trees. That's how long he's waiting for this seed. And then look, snow on the trees. The whole year passed, and nothing grew. And then spring came, and all the children put on their best clothes to greet the emperor. They rushed to the palace with their beautiful flowers, eagerly hoping to be chosen. Ping was so sad and ashamed of his empty pot. He thought the other children would laugh at him because for once, he just couldn't get a flower to grow. His clever friend ran by holding a great big plant. "Ping," he said, "you're not really going to the emperor with an empty pot, are you? Couldn't you go grow a great big flower like mine?" "I've grown lots of flowers," Ping said. "It's just this seed won't grow." Ping's father overheard this and said, "You did your best, and your best is good enough to present to the emperor." So holding the empty pot in his hands, Ping went straight away to the palace. The emperor was looking at the flowers slowly, one by one. How beautiful all these flowers were. But the emperor was frowning, and he didn't say a word. Finally, he came to Ping. Ping hung his head in shame, expecting that the emperor would be mad. The emperor asked him, "Why did you bring an empty pot?" Ping started to cry and replied, "I planted the seed you gave me, and I watered it every day, but it didn't sprout. I put it in a better pot with better soil, but still it didn't sprout. I tended it all year long, but nothing a flower. It was the best I could do." When the emperor heard these words, a smile slowly spread over his face, and he put his arms around Ping. And then he said to everyone there, "I have found him. I have found the next person, the one who's worthy to be emperor. Where you got your seeds from, I do not know," he said to all the children, "because the seeds I gave to every one of you have been cooked and they would never grow. So it was impossible for any of them to grow any flowers." He said to everyone, "Ping had great courage to appear before me with the empty truth. And now I reward him with my entire kingdom and make him the emperor of all the land." That's the end. Ooh, that's a great story. None of those seeds would grow. But all the children that brought pots with flowers, what must they have done? What did they do? They found different seeds. Not the seeds the emperor gave them. They found different seeds because they probably had pots that didn't grow either. Everyone would have had pots that didn't grow. And some of the children, they decided, "Oh no, we need flowers," so they found different seeds. Ping was very brave, the emperor said, because Ping brought that empty pot. Ping was honest. The flower didn't grow, so Ping said that the flower didn't grow. He told the truth. And the great thing about this story is that for all of us, if you're small or if you're a grown-up, telling the truth with lots of things can be very easy. If I ask you what color shoes you have on, it's very easy to tell the truth. They're black, or they're green, or they're blue. That's an easy one. But what if telling the truth is hard? What if telling the truth makes you embarrassed? Like, "Oh no, I'm the only one who has an empty pot. I'm going to be so embarrassed. Everyone's going to laugh at me." Those are the moments when telling the truth is so important, even when it's difficult. So remember this story. It's a good one to remember. I want to invite us all to go to Kids Spirit or Youth Cafe or our preschool class.
You gotta sing, 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 sing out loud. No matter if you stay on track. You gotta sing, 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 sing out loud.
We find wisdom in many different places in our lives. Wisdom in those individuals who have experienced incredible circumstances in their lives and have had the opportunity to turn the tables and treat another as they've been treated and make a different choice. Nelson Mandela is one of those people, and many of you will remember the film Invictus that takes just a very short period of his presidency when he saw an opportunity to create unity among his people in a beloved sport in South Africa, rugby. And this is a very brief clip about that particular time, and we have a little insight into what it takes to actually appear with an empty pot, in this case, to say words your people will not want you to hear. In this lived experience, we hear a very old story that comes from the 9th century before the Common Era, a story that comes from the books of Kings and Samuel that tell the story of the formation of the nation of the people of Israel, ancient Israel. This is a story about one of their kings who was a very powerful king, but not a very good king. Naboth, the Jezreelite, had a vineyard in Jezreel, right beside the palace of King Ahab of Samaria. And Ahab said to Naboth, "Give me your vineyard so I can have it for a vegetable garden. It's right next to my palace. I'll give you a better vineyard in exchange, or if you'd rather, I'll pay you its value in money." But Naboth said to Ahab, "God forbid that I should sell you my ancestral inheritance." And Ahab went home, resentful and sullen because Naboth had said, "I will not sell you my land." And he lay down on his bed and he turned away his face and he wouldn't eat. And Ahab's wife Jezebel came to him and he said, "Why are you so depressed? Why won't you eat?" So he told her. And Jezebel said, "Well, you're the king, aren't you? Get up, eat some food, be cheerful. I'll get the vineyard of Naboth for you." So Jezebel wrote letters in Ahab's name, and she sealed them with his seal, and she sent those letters to the elders and nobles who lived in the same town as Naboth. And in the letter she wrote, "Hold a feast, and put Naboth in the front of the assembly, at the head table, and seat 2 scoundrels with him, and have them bring a fake charge against him, saying, 'You've betrayed God and the king,' and then take him out and stone him to death." The elders and nobles who lived in Naboth's town did just as Jezebel instructed them. Just as she'd written in the letters, they were sent. And as it was written, it was done. And as soon as the king and queen heard that Naboth was dead, they took possession of his vineyard. Somewhere in this ancient and violent tale, what is it about integrity that makes it hard to define, but easy to identify? It's one of those qualities we know unmistakably when we see it. But every attempt we make at a definition seems to somehow fall short. We've seen it in the headlines of history, and we've seen it in the small print in our lives. We've seen it in shining acts of courage, and we've seen it in the most humble expressions of honesty. We see it in the radical witness of a poet like Adrienne Rich. In 1997, she refused to accept the government's National Medal for the Arts. It was a principled stance for her. in refusing to participate in a ritual that would feel hypocritical to her given decades of eroding funding for the arts across the United States. And she viewed it as an impossibility for an American president to honor certain token artists, while artists at large were so dishonored. It was an act of integrity that made headlines. And we've seen it in the small print in our lives that goes almost unnoticed and uncelebrated every day. In the honest act of a customer returning money found at an ATM that isn't theirs. We've seen it in someone's refusal to laugh at a racist joke. Or we've seen it in the courage of someone speaking their conscience even though their opinion isn't going to square with the majority of their listeners. We've seen integrity with our own eyes, and we've seen it keeping company with its cousins. Honesty, authenticity, courage. And we've recognized a kind of selflessness about integrity. It's a quality of character that has a habit of serving a larger goodness than a personal gain. That's what gave me pause in that scene from the movie Invictus, where Mandela refuses to support what is politically expedient in the hope of serving a larger purpose. And to do that, he has to publicly disagree with his supporters. He has to risk losing the very support that placed him in a position of national leadership. As the ANC had come into power, there were countless opportunities for the new government to erase or exploit or oppress the Afrikaans minority, to retaliate, to turn the tables, having gained the advantage. As their president, he could have remained silent as the sports council of his party chose to change the name and the colors of the national rugby team. A seemingly innocuous and symbolic gesture. But in it was something much deeper. And he recognized an opportunity to exercise integrity in a way that could instill a measure of trust. He was fiercely loyal to something greater than votes or funding. He was loyal to a truth that had the possibility of serving a greater good. And in that, he sought to inspire a higher humanity than repeating the history of the oppressor, yet again being oppressed by the one who has now gained the advantage. That's what we see in that ancient character Naboth as well. The story of Ahab and Jezebel and Naboth is horrific to read. It's steeped in a worldview that attributes successes in battle to the favor of its gods and failures in battle to the punishment of its gods. It's rooted in the belief that the king is the representative of the God on earth and serves at the will and the favor of that God. So Ahab comes by his sense of entitlement pretty naturally. That fable begins with a king eyeing a piece of property that's right next to his that would make an ideal vegetable garden. It's right outside his kitchen door. It would be so convenient. And it seems like he made a fair offer, maybe even a generous offer. A land swap for a better parcel, or fair market value, if Naboth would rather have cold hard cash. It doesn't really seem like a bad deal for Naboth. What fool turns down a king offering cash? Maybe a principled fool. Like what politician risks losing the support of his base to placate those who are never going to vote for him? What artist turns down a coveted national award that others might have been quick to accept? Who risks personal loss to attempt to inspire action that serves a larger purpose? But Naboth does turn down the king's offer, because as far as he was concerned, his land was not for sale. It could not be for sale, not now, not ever, because he holds it in trust from his ancestors for his children and the generations who will come after them. To sell that land might confer a quick benefit on him, but it robs the future. By depriving the generations who will come after him of the land they're going to need to feed and support their families. If you've been to this part of the world, you know that fertile land is pretty hard to come by. And in this ancient world, landlessness is the first step into poverty. And this land has been the land of his people for generations. It's the land that raised him. But the privileged mindset of the royals of every time and place struggles with what to do when life says no. So Ahab, the embodiment of entitlement, stomps home, slams his bedroom door, and starts a hunger strike. And after a while, the queen gets fed up with eating alone. And she takes charge of the situation. She pulls back his silk sheets and she lifts the shades in his bedroom and she says, "Get up and put your crown on and start acting like a king. And you turn your attention to the affairs of the state and leave that little vegetable garden to me." Well, as the brutal story goes, one conspiracy, two accomplices, and a premeditated murder, and the mission's accomplished. He's got his little vegetable garden and Naboth's death certificate. He's got title to the disputed vineyard. The contrast in these three characters is striking, because we have sort of three different ethical frameworks at play. It seems like Ahab's guiding principle is the market. Trade, rules, everything. Everything's for sale. It's just finding the right price, the right buyer. Everything is a commodity to be sold or bought or traded. And Jezebel's North Star is entitlement. You want it, you take it. You have privilege, use it. You have power, use it for what you want. Naboth uses the power of his no to be faithful to his commitment to his ancestors and to his descendants. He is fiercely loyal in the story to a truth that serves a greater good. Because for Naboth, the land is sacred. It has its own integrity. It's not an object from which to derive a benefit. It's a subject with which he's in relationship. It's not his to bide or trade or sell, because it doesn't belong to him. He's just holding it in trust. He belongs to it. Integrity isn't cheap. It requires expending risk and courage and sometimes self-sacrifice. It's cost many their lives. It's an interesting word that comes from the mathematical term integer, whole numbers. And indeed, integrity has something to do with wholeness. It's loyal to a whole that's greater than ourselves. And it's gritty, it isn't pretty. It's sometimes a hard and lonely way, often misunderstood in its moment, and sometimes celebrated in the long view that comes from the future. And there's no satisfactory little soundbite definition of integrity. But isn't it the gritty, principled work of being loyal to the truths which serve the higher good, whether or not it brings any personal gain? And isn't it the work of a lifetime to be rooted in integrity, to be guided by a north star of truthfulness that's placed in the service of respect and compassion? Or in the way Michelle Obama has expressed it, when they go low, we go high. When Ahab and Jezebel went low, Naboth went high. When the Sports Council went low, Mandela went high. What is it in our lives? Where is it in our lives that we're invited to go higher? I want to take a moment to express gratitude for all the ways that you support this community, for the many who volunteered in various ways a week ago for our fall dinner, which you'll know has brought in approximately $14,000. So thank you to those who cooked and cleaned and set up. donated and purchased items for the time we had together, for those offering entertainment, for all the many ways that each of you bring your full self to this community. Thank you for the ways in which you give of your time to support programs like Making Tax Time Pay and Food Bank, and ways that you contribute your capacities and your time and your gifts. Last week, we made available a package, an envelope that has opportunities for you to think about how you would like to contribute to this community in the coming year. And those envelopes that contained letters of support and commitment. If you received yours last week, thank you so much for taking it so that you've saved us the postage. Some of you we thought we might see this week, or you left without yours last week, so please check your mailbox in the foyer. You might find it there. And if there isn't one in your mailbox and you didn't receive one, there are ones on the center table without any names. Please help yourself. And just a reminder that financially there are a number of ways to contribute that you're familiar with. They're here on the slide, and we thank you for the ways that you support us in our fundraisers, in your regular givings, in the purchase of grocery cards. Each way is so important and helpful to us as a community, and we thank you. As we close our time in this circle this morning, we think about the way in which we will take the light of our integrity into the living of our lives in this week. We go in the light of stories that inspire us. We go in the light of values that are a kind of North Star to guide us. We go in the best of the wisdom of our tradition. And we go in the accountability we have to one another. We go to live fully and deeply and well.